My grandmother always said the quiet ones are the ones you should never cross. I used to laugh at that. Now I understand exactly what she meant. My mother's 60th birthday dinner started the way these things always do: too much wine, too many opinions, and my aunt deciding it was the perfect moment to make a toast. She stood up, tapped her glass, and smiled the way people smile when they're about to say something they've been saving for a long time. "To my sister," she said, raising her glass toward my mother, who raised a doctor. She paused, letting the room look at my cousin Marcus, and also raised. "Well." She glanced at me. "Maya, who's still doing her little spreadsheet thing?" The table laughed. "Not everyone, but enough," my uncle added. "Spreadsheets, is that what we're calling it now?" More laughter. My cousin Marcus didn't say anything. He just smiled into his wine glass, which was somehow worse. My mother, my own mother, looked at her plate. My younger brother, who was 17 and thought being cruel was the same as being funny, leaned over and whispered loud enough for the table to hear, "Didn't you tell Dad your job was basically data entry?" I picked up my water glass. I set it back down. I folded my napkin very carefully and placed it beside my plate. Nobody noticed me leave. I sat in my car in the driveway for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. Then I drove home. Here's what nobody at that table knew about my little spreadsheet thing. For the past 4 years, I had been managing the financial backend for 3 family-connected businesses: my uncle's HVAC company, my aunt's catering operation she ran out of her home kitchen, and the small rental property portfolio my mother and aunt co-owned together, not as a favor. As a contracted arrangement that started when my uncle's accountant quit without notice during tax season, and he called me in a panic because he knew I had a finance degree and he needed someone immediately. I said yes, because I needed the work. I was 26. I had just left a corporate job that was making me miserable, and freelance clients were slow to come in. So I stepped in. What started as a 2-week emergency became 4 years. I handled payroll for 11 HVAC employees. I managed vendor invoices for the catering side. I tracked lease renewals, maintenance costs, and property tax filings for 4 rental units across 2 counties. I set up automated payment systems, caught a billing error that saved my uncle over $9,000, and renegotiated 2 vendor contracts that nobody had looked at in 6 years. I did all of it from my apartment. On my laptop. With my spreadsheets. Nobody talked about it at family dinners because my uncle preferred to say he ran a tight operation, and my aunt preferred to say her catering business was doing wonderfully, and my mother preferred to say the properties basically managed themselves. I let them. I didn't need the credit. I needed the income, and honestly, I liked the work. I was good at it. But sitting in my car after that dinner, listening to my aunt's laughter echo in my head, something shifted. I didn't make any decisions that night. I want to be clear about that. I drove home, I made tea, and I watched television until I fell asleep. I was not plotting anything. I was just tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. The next morning, I did something I had been putting off for almost a year. I called a client, a small logistics company I had been doing project work for, and I told them I was ready to take the full-time consulting contract they had offered me 3 times. The pay was better than everything I was doing for my family combined. The hours were defined. The people did not make toasts about me at dinner parties. I accepted the contract. Then I sat down and wrote 3 emails. The emails were professional, clear, and gave 30 days notice. I outlined everything I managed, explained that I would prepare full handover documentation for each operation, and offered to answer questions during the transition period. I recommended 2 other freelance finance professionals who could take over. I listed every automated system, every login, every scheduled payment, every renewal date coming up in the next 6 months. I spent 2 weeks building the most thorough handover documents I have ever created in my life: folder structures, step-by-step guides, a literal glossary of terms, because I realized, in building it, that none of them actually understood what I had built for them. I sent everything. I followed up. I confirmed receipt. My uncle replied, "Okay, thanks." My aunt did not reply. My mother called and said she was sure everything would be fine, and that the new person would figure it out, and wasn't it exciting that I had a new opportunity? I said yes. I said I was really looking forward to it. I meant it. The 30 days passed. I transitioned out cleanly. My new contract started on a Monday. By Wednesday of the following week, my phone started. It began with my aunt. Tuesday, 7:14 a.m. Maya, the catering deposit for the Henderson event on Saturday, it didn't go through. The venue is saying the check bounced? I was in a meeting. I saw it on my break. The check she was referring to was a business check drawn on an account that had an automatic transfer set up to pull from her operating account every 2 weeks to maintain the minimum balance. That automatic transfer had been set up through my login credentials on her business banking portal. When I offboarded, I had flagged this explicitly in my handover documents page 4, section 2, highlighted in yellow, that this transfer needed to be manually set up again under new credentials, or the account balance would drop below the threshold required for the check writing feature to function. She had not set it up again. I texted back. Hi, this was covered in the handover doc. Page 4. Section 2. You'll need to contact the bank to restore the automatic transfer and set up new authorization credentials. The bank number is in the document under Section 7, Contacts. She did not reply to that text. She called my mother instead. My mother called me at 7:52 a.m. Sweetheart, I think there might be some confusion with your aunt's account. Is there anything you can do quickly just to help her get through the Henderson event? I said, Mom, I don't have access anymore. I deactivated my credentials when I offboarded. I'm also in the middle of my second week at a new job. Everything she needs is in the documents I sent. My mother said, she doesn't really understand those documents. I said, I know. I offered to do a walkthrough call during the transition period. She didn't schedule one. My mother said, she's been busy. I said, I know. I'm sorry she's stressed. The bank can help her today if she calls before noon. My mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, you know your aunt means well. I said I knew. We hung up. The Henderson event was apparently a disaster. I heard about it from my brother, who heard about it from his friend, whose mom was a guest. The catering deposit cleared. Eventually, my aunt handled it, but it cleared late, which caused a sequencing problem with the venue's setup schedule, which meant the food arrived during the cocktail hour instead of before it. My aunt was mortified. She told everyone the venue had made an error. My uncle's situation took longer to surface, but it was bigger when it did. The HVAC company had a quarterly insurance audit in early November. I had managed this audit for 3 years. It required pulling together payroll records, equipment logs, vehicle usage reports, and certificates of insurance from 3 different providers, all formatted to a specific template the auditing firm used. My uncle had received my handover documents. He had also, apparently, hired his nephew-in-law to handle the finance stuff because he thought it would save money. The nephew-in-law was 22 and had taken 1 accounting class in community college. I found out about the audit problem when my uncle called me on a Thursday evening. Maya. His voice was different from how it had been at my mother's birthday dinner. Smaller. I've got a situation. I let him talk. The audit firm had flagged 3 inconsistencies in the payroll records. The vehicle logs hadn't been maintained since August. 2 of the certificates of insurance had expired, and nobody had requested renewals. The audit was in 9 days. I need you to come in, he said. Just for this. I'll pay you. I asked what rate he had in mind. He paused. What you were making before. I said, I was making what we agreed on 4 years ago. I've taken on a full-time contract now. My rate is different. He asked what my rate was. I told him. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, that's Maya. That's 3 times what we had. I said, I know. That's my current market rate. The audit firm can also help you reconstruct some of this if you call them directly and explain the transition. They've seen this before. It won't be cheap, but it's an option. He said he'd think about it. He called back the next morning and said he'd pay my rate for a 2-week engagement to clean up the audit materials. I wrote a contract. He signed it. I did the work. The audit passed. He did not say thank you when the audit results came in, but he did pay the invoice within 48 hours, which was faster than he had ever paid me before. The rental properties were the last to surface, and honestly, the most painful to watch, because that one involved my mother directly. My mother and my aunt co-owned 4 rental units. My mother had always presented this to friends as a savvy investment she managed with her sister. What she did not mention was that I had been the one managing it, collecting rent through an online portal, tracking late payments, corresponding with tenants about maintenance requests, coordinating with a handyman my mother had used for years, and handling the property tax filings each year. When I offboarded, I transferred the portal admin access to my mother's email. I sent her a 12-page guide. I scheduled a call to walk her through it. She canceled the call because she had a hair appointment and said we could do it another time. We did not do it another time. In October, one of the tenants in the second unit, a family who had been there for 3 years, good tenants, always on time, sent a maintenance request through the portal. There was a water heater issue. The request sat unread for 19 days because my mother hadn't set up the portal notification emails on her phone. The tenant, after 19 days, called a plumber themselves. The plumber diagnosed a failing water heater. The tenant, knowing their rights, reached out to a tenant advocacy organization. By the time my mother found out there was an issue, she had a formal repair demand letter, citing the number of days the request had gone unaddressed, the applicable state habitability code, and a request for partial rent abatement. My mother called me crying. I want to be honest about how I felt in that moment. I did not feel satisfied. I did not feel vindicated. I felt tired and sad, and a little bit guilty, even though I knew logically, clearly, that I had done everything right. I had documented everything. I had offered to help with the transition. I had given notice. I had been professional. I had tried. But she was my mother, and she was crying. I said, "Mom, I need you to listen to me carefully, okay? This is fixable. Are you listening?" She said yes. I walked her through what to do. Not for free, I wasn't doing that anymore, but I told her the steps before she had formally asked me to help, because she was my mother, and the steps were important and time-sensitive. Get the water heater replaced immediately, today if possible. Respond to the tenant in writing with an apology and a repair timeline. Do not ignore the advocacy organization letter. Contact a property management attorney to respond to the abatement request properly. She did all of it. She also asked if I would take over managing the properties again. I said I couldn't. I said my schedule didn't have room. Both of those things were true. I also said, "Mom, I gave you everything you needed to do this yourself. I know it feels overwhelming, but you can hire a property manager, a professional one, someone whose whole job this is, for about 8% of monthly rent. I'll send you some names." I sent her 3 names. She hired one of them within the week. She has not asked me to come back. I think she understood, without either of us saying it, that something had changed. A few weeks after everything had settled, after the audit, after the tenant situation, after my aunt's catering drama had cycled through and faded, I had dinner with my grandmother. Just the 2 of us at her kitchen table, the way we used to when I was young, and she would let me help her cook, even though I wasn't very good at it yet. She asked how the new job was going. I told her it was good. Really good. I told her about the team and the work, and the fact that I had set my own hours for the first time in years. She listened. Then she said, "And your uncle? Your aunt?" I said things were fine. She looked at me for a long moment. She said, "You know, I heard about the birthday dinner." I said I assumed she had. She said, "Your aunt has always needed an audience. Don't take it personally." I said, "I didn't take it personally. I just stopped being available." She smiled at that. She didn't say anything else about it. Before I left, she hugged me at the door and said, "The ones who do the real work are never the ones making the noise about it. That's how you know who the real workers are." I drove home thinking about that. Here's what I know now that I didn't fully understand 4 years ago, when I stepped in during a tax season panic because someone needed me. Doing the invisible work doesn't mean you have to stay invisible forever. It also doesn't mean you're owed recognition. It means you have a skill. A real one. And skills have value you get to decide. My aunt still runs her catering business. She hired a bookkeeper. From what my brother tells me, she complains the bookkeeper isn't as thorough as the system we used to have. She has never said that to me directly. My uncle's HVAC company still operates. He has a new accountant now. A real one. He texted me once to ask a quick question about a vendor contract. I answered because it took 30 seconds. He said thanks. That was the entire interaction. My mother is doing well. She talks to the property manager weekly and has become, in her own words, much more aware of what goes into all of this. She told me recently she wishes she had paid more attention when I was handling things. I told her it was okay. I meant it. The new job is going well. My name is on actual deliverables now. People know what I do. I have a title that explains my work in 10 seconds so I don't have to. I was at a work event last month and someone asked me what I did before consulting. I said I ran financial operations for a family business portfolio, payroll, property management, vendor contracts, compliance. The person said, "Oh wow, that sounds like a lot." I said, "It was." I did not say anything else. But I thought about my aunt's toast. I thought about my brother's whisper. I thought about my mother looking at her plate. And then I thought about my grandmother at the door. The real workers are never the ones making the noise. I drove home. I made tea. I had a full night's sleep. If there's anything I want you to take from this, and I mean you, whoever's watching this right now, whatever time it is where you are, it's this. The value of what you do doesn't disappear just because the people around you can't see it. They will eventually. Not because you force them to, not because you blow anything up, but because things tend to stop working when the person who actually kept them running finally decides to spend their energy somewhere else. You are allowed to decide that. You are allowed to be done being invisible.